It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mainz and Dutts. I'm your host, Mainz, and my colleague, dressed like a professor from a university this week, is Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
These are my spare glasses because I've left my real glasses in work, which is silly of me.
That is one of the greatest "I'm old" comments of all time. That's something old people say. These are my spare glasses, because I've left my real glasses at work, while wearing a quarter zip, and what seems like a shirt underneath. It doesn't get much more, yeah, I'm a dad than that. It's oldness. What can we say? Um, we are here, Neil. Championship weekend, and one of our teams still in the hunt. It's going to be a big week. This week, before we get to the game, we're going to look at last week's losers. What next for them, and how do they get to that this weekend next year? We're going to look at the darlings and losers we picked last week and pick some more for this week, and then obviously give us picks of the week as it's the final weekend of multiple games until September, which is a scary thought considering it's January. But
Yeah, it's almost time for Wycliffe Jean to clear off, isn't it?
yeah, it's
Or
almost
was he
time to get.
December?
He was November.
Of course he was.
He's November, but you're old. You would have remembered that if you would have had your real glasses rather than your spare ones. But I digress. And
You
while we're not
kids with your loud music and your baggy clothes.
exactly right, yeah. Without further ado, let's get on with the main event.
Time now for the main event.
As we do in playoff season, we focus on the losers because that's how our brains work. Try and find out what's next for them and how did now for these four. I think it should be clear, right? These are teams 4 to 8 in the league this year. Really, they're not bad teams. Far from it. They are in the top quarter in the league, but not quite good enough. And the question is, how do they get better, and how do they get to the championship weekend next year, or obviously to the Super Bowl? So let's do it in order, Neil. The New York Football Giants absolutely boat raced by your Philadelphia Eagles in what must have been one of the more satisfying Philadelphia wins in a considerable amount of time. How do the Giants get better, and can they?
Well, they have big questions that they need to answer quite quickly. They obviously have Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, free agents. They need to decide what they're going to do. The thing that I'm hearing is that maybe they don't think they need to reset the running back market with Saquon, in which case they can get him not at a discount, but at like the Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb rate. And they also need to decide, is Daniel Jones the answer, or is he a stopgap who has shown growth? So they need to decide, how best to allocate those funds. If it's something like it's a 3-year deal, but they are only guarantees after 2 years, then you see how you go. They have 42 million in cap space, so obviously they can make things happen, but they do need to invest in pieces on offense. It's not a talented wide receiver core. It punched above its weight. If they believe in Daniel Jones and think he can progress as a passer, they need to go some way towards surrounding him with weapons. They also only have 40 players under contract for 2023, and of course that does not include Jones and Barkley. Doesn't include two of their wide receivers who were quite productive towards the end of the season, Richie James and Darius Slayton either. The defense also needs work because, let's say, they had the crap kicked out of them by the Eagles in both facets, but mainly on the ground. So I think we can agree that they took massive strides in 2022 under Brian Daboll and with Joe Shane. This is the big test now. If they can't come to terms with Daniel Jones, do they have to blow it up and start again? They're not going to be back in the playoffs next year, I don't think. But they have a good opportunity to build.
They are very similar to the Buffalo Bills the year before they drafted Josh Allen, who made the playoffs with Tyrod Taylor, I believe.
Tyrod, yeah.
And then decisions had to be made, and they decided to take a new quarterback because although Tyrod had done a decent job that year, they didn't think he was going to get them over the line. I believe Saquon Barkley has turned down $12 million a year. I assume Daniel Jones is looking for somewhere in the $30 million plus range. That is $42 million, Neil, which in theory, correct me if I'm wrong, is around the exact number you said their cap space number is.
Well, yes, but they're
No,
not
I know,
going to get
but
all that. It's going to be spread over the contracts, isn't it?
Of
So
course.
it'll be.
But I think there's a question of whether you want to go forwards. Do you need to go backwards to go forwards with the New York Giants, right? Let's be honest, when we did the preview 20 weeks ago, plus 25 weeks ago, we thought this team was goddamn awful. We thought that Daboll had the chance to be a very good coach, but they were talent deficient. I don't necessarily think the talent deficiency has gone away. They have some cap space. They have 4 picks in the top 100. I do look and think, I don't want to saddle myself with contracts like another team who we will come on to later in a similar division. And by similar, I mean the same. So, do I really want to pay Daniel Jones $120 million over 3 years, 80 guaranteed? Do I want to pay $40 million for Saquon Barkley? I'm not sure I do. I'd rather spend that on, better wide receivers and maybe see if I can get a quarterback in the draft. I don't think they will. I think both players probably sign again. I just wonder if that's really the right approach they should be taking. Let's move on to the Jacksonville Jags, who, much like the Giants, have a good feeling about where they are right now. They have a excellent head coach. I think we can both agree on that. I think the bad taste from Doug Peterson's final year, 18 months in Philadelphia, has probably been washed away now. He's now remembered as the guy who won the Super Bowl and now won a division with Jacksonville. You have Trevor Lawrence. You have some pieces on defense. And you're in the AFC South. And surely the major beneficial thing here is you're in the AFC South and that place is a complete and utter S show.
Yeah, they're already, in my opinion, they're the favourites for that division next year anyway. They do have some pieces on defence, as you said. They need to play better because I don't think Trayvon Walker was the most overwhelming first overall defensive player I've seen. I think he had flashes, but I think he's got room to grow. As I say, they play in a very, very weak division, which is us being polite because what the division actually is, it rhymes with bog hit. They have 42 players under contract next season. They are $23 million over the salary cap at this time, based on the projected cap figures from overthecap.com. Their main free agent is Evan Ingram, who showed last season that he's functional. This was the Evan Ingram from the early Giants years, not the last 2 years with Jason Garrett and Joe Judge. They've also got Juwan Taylor, their right tackle, is a free agent. Now, Howie Roseman, when he had Doug Peterson as his head coach, did a good job of building around his young quarterback by manipulating the cap and opening up spending opportunities. Trent Baalke is not that guy. So it'll be interesting to see the moves they make, if they can bring back Ingram, if they want to bring back Taylor. They have Calvin Ridley, in all likelihood, joining the roster in 2023. It's been 2 years since we last saw the best of Calvin Ridley. He meshes, if he is back to the player he was, meshes quite well with Trevor Lawrence's skill set and the way that he can be used in this offense. So I'd be quite hopeful of that, because that then elevates him to, the lead wide receiver, and it knocks everyone else down a peg. So Christian Kirk can go to being a 2, Zay Jones can go to being a 3, which is probably where they should be anyway. As I say, this team, they need to look at making sure that Trevor Lawrence is protected, Trevor Lawrence has weapons, and also they need to add some more beef on the defense so that they don't breeze through the regular season. And by breeze, I mean AFC South style breeze. And then when they come to the playoffs, they get kicked in the mouth.
Yeah, I think it's tough, right? Because it would be easy to almost stand pat and win the AFC South and think you've achieved something again. You know, very much like we gave a lot of credit to Mike Vrabel and the Tennessee Titans over the last few years. But even as the number 1 seed, they never really looked like going anywhere in the playoffs. So there's a difference between winning the AFC South and winning 2 or 3 playoff games. And I think they really do need to be able to do things and make changes to make them available to have 2 or 3 playoff wins. Now you have a quarterback. I think we can kind of agree that we've got someone who we believe could do big things in the league. Kirk's okay, Jones okay. Ridley should have helped them. I still want one more. And then I think you need to look at pieces on the defense that make them better and stronger. What I will say is, if you love a Jacksonville game, which you regularly see at 6 p.m. UK time, you may be disappointed because you might not see them as much at 6 o'clock, and I'll explain why. Quarterbacks, they play. The possibility, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Brock Purdy in a Super Bowl champion situation, Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, and probably one of Will Levis, 2 of probably actually Will Levis, Bryce Young, and CJ Stroud twice. So there's some big games on the horizon for Jacksonville, and I expect them to be prime time more. And I'm sure having a big game in that there Wembley Stadium. Let's go from positive to negative, Neil. We're just much more comfortable in that space and talk about the Buffalo Bills. There's many different avenues I can go down here. I've been accused regularly by many people of saying that everyone should be fired immediately at all times. And I may come on, because I do. I may come on to that. But I just think that if I built a team to win in games in Buffalo, I would make sure they're able to tackle and run in the snow.
Yeah, it was. They were never in that game on Sunday. The Bills have had a problem that their offense has been geared around Josh Allen, which isn't the stupidest thing in the world to do. He's super talented. He has a howitzer attached to his right shoulder, and they have Stephon Diggs. The problem they have, and this is not a problem for the last 2 years at least, is that they have Josh Allen and they have Stephon Diggs. There's no one else stepping up. They're trotting out a endless stream of veteran receivers who were good in their day, but the day has long since passed. You cannot seriously be taken serious as a Super Bowl contender in a conference that has Patrick Mahomes with Travis Kelce, that has Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Hayden Hurst and the running game, and you're lining up alongside Stephon Diggs with Gabe Davis, Cole Beasley and John Brown in 2022. No, not acceptable. The ground game, last year, they showed there's going to be games where, do you know what, we're just going to run the crap out of it because we can. And we will. And it worked. This year, they didn't even try. The difference between Brian Daboll calling this offense and Ken Dorsey, it's been noticeable. Now, they still have a chance of winning the Super Bowl, or a chance of winning their division and advancing deep into the playoffs because they have Allen and Diggs. But this season, and certainly the playoffs have shown, you need more than that. So they need to make wide receiver 2 a position of priority in the draft or free agency, or just keep adding to it. The problem they have in free agency is that they are $20 million over the cap. and have only got 39 players under contract. And their key free agents include Devon Singletary, Roger Saffold, one of their best linemen, Jordan Poyer, one of their iconic safeties, and Dane Jackson, who was one of their cornerbacks, I believe, as well. This team needs to get better, and they need to get cleverer with the cap to try and bring in these reinforcements, because they need them. Now, they are, as at the time of writing, you'd still have to make them favourites in the AFC East. But I don't think they're as overwhelming favourites as they were when we were talking about them this August or whenever it was.
I think regularly we forget how difficult it is to beat elite teams on a regular basis. And also that we overestimate 2 or 3 players and say that means the rest of the roster is excellent. So this team has Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, and every now and again you see Gabe Davis make a spectacular play. Oh, what an offense this team is. One thing that this team cannot do, or doesn't do, or didn't do this year, was consistently move it down the field. It was bomb or out. And you listen to the tape heads and they're saying that the plays are still there, Dorsey's still doing them, but Josh Allen wasn't going for them. Also, no one is suggesting the Kansas City Chiefs or the Cincinnati Bengals run the ball like the 1995 Dallas Cowboys. However, when they do run it, they are efficient. So they are top 5 efficient teams in EPA per play and rushing, even though they're like mid-20s in when they rush it. However, having that efficiency means people have to respect it. No one respects the Bills' run game. No one. And you've got a unicorn at quarterback who can do that type of thing, and no, they're not interested in their run game. I do believe in a Mainzy fire people shock. Questions need to be asked about whether there was a mistake made by keeping Sean McDermott and getting rid of Brian Dable. And what I will say is with the exception of Bill Belichick, defensive coaches in recent years have struggled to succeed because they can't keep offensive coordinators with them. And it's why offensive coordinators have taken over the league in that similar sense. I think Sean McDermott is an excellent coach. But I do wonder if, given him being a defensive coordinator, if you can actually go any further with him there. Now, there's also a fatal flaw for the Buffalo Bills. And that fatal flaw is they're in the wrong conference. Because Joe Burrow, going nowhere. Patrick Mahomes, going nowhere. Trevor Lawrence, going nowhere. Just to a lesser extent. Justin Herbert, going nowhere. Lamar Jackson, maybe staying, maybe not. This is not the easy side of the draw. You ain't playing Taylor Heineke in a wild card game on this side of the draw. Every game you're going to play is going to be against what people perceive as a top 10 quarterback. That is difficult. So you need a lot of luck. And if you don't get it, then people call you a failure. And unfortunately, you don't have to like it, but that's how the world works. And right now, the Buffalo Bills are the San Diego Chargers under Phillip Rivers. That we all expect them to do better next year in the playoffs because they went 12-4 again, and it'll just happen next year. It doesn't quite happen, and they just get a little bit worse, and then it'll be all right because they've still got Rivers and they've still got Gates, and it'll be all right. And okay, they've lost this guy, but it'll be okay. And they win 11 games, and they get beat again. You're like, it'll be all right next year. And I really fear for the Bills that windows don't allow, regardless of what Joe Burrow says, windows aren't forever. And you may be out of a cycle here. Now, you may get back into one because you've got Josh Allen and he's with you for the next, I don't know, near enough 10 years. But I'm fearful that them having a opportunity to win the Super Bowl may be past for a couple of years. Final team, Neil. We've been waiting for it. This is where we make our money, is the Dallas Cowboys. It would be easy to be hot take merchants here and be easy to go, let's make our Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott comparisons. But I think you're better than that. We'll find out. The issue with this team is they pay a lot of people, a lot of Jerry's mates, a lot of money who they shouldn't be paying.
If they were to cut Ezekiel Elliott before next season, they would save $4 million on the cap, but it would leave $11.8 million in dead money. Ezekiel Elliott has, for certainly the last year, maybe going into the year before, not been good at what he is supposed to do, run the ball. He's not. They have looked more explosive when Pollard has had the ball. Obviously, he got hurt last week, and once he was gone, it was this team all of a sudden looked at itself and went, we have no explosion on this team. We have a grinder running back. We have possession receivers. This is not good. The defense is very good. The defense, has overperformed based on what they should be doing from a turnover point of view 2 years in a row. I'd be very surprised if that happened for a third year. But this team has already told us what they want next year. They want more of the same because they've stuck with Mike McCarthy, because they want a playoff game. Great. Give him 5 more years. Keep him. This is great. As long as he's there, you're not a threat to anyone in that conference, and certainly not in a Super Bowl.
People will tell you that all teams want to win, and people will tell you that Jerry Jones, out of all the owners, wants to win more than any other. I am here to tell you that Jerry Jones is not serious about winning the Super Bowl. Jerry Jones is serious about the Dallas Cowboys being famous. If Jerry Jones was serious about winning the Super Bowl, Sean Payton would be his head coach. He would never have re-signed Ezekiel Elliott. He would have kept Amari Cooper and not re-signed Michael Gallup. He would not have 4 lads earning somewhere in the region of $17 million against the cap, who were all over the age of 31. He will have paid Dak Prescott, and that's fine. And I think I want to be clear on this. Dak Prescott is a good quarterback. Dak Prescott is probably 8 to 10, 8 to 12 in the league. And I understand that if you have a quote-unquote franchise quarterback, which I think a top 10 quarterback would be that, at some point you are going to have to pay him a lot of money. So next year you will see figures like $49 million against the cap for Dak Prescott. Unfortunately, that is the going rate. That's just where we are. Do I think he is in the same ballpark as other quarterbacks in the league? No. But he's in the NFC. So, it's not that great. But you know what the offense looks like, Neil? The offense looks eerily similar to what Green Bay's offense looked like in about 2016. A team that everyone told me had limitless talent, won 12 games and then did nothing in the playoffs. If only we could work out what the link is between those two franchises between now and the Packers in 2016.
I know it was the final play of the game, and I know they were approaching miracle territory, but you cannot be taken serious as an offense if you roll out that play. Because it was never, especially when you've shown and you've announced how important Ezekiel Elliott is to your team, you've just got him killed willingly.
I agree with you. I mean, I'm not going to. I'm not going to blow them up for that. I just don't think they're not as serious about winning as everybody says they are. That's all I come back to every single time, is that I believe there's a lot of people who think a lot of franchises are serious about winning, and I think there's about 6 of them.
Apparently, sorry, just like breaking news, Mike McCarthy said he is meeting with Kellen Moore tomorrow and would not confirm that Moore would be back as offensive coordinator.
Which is fine, because Kellen Moore's one of the... Now, I don't think Kellen Moore's done a very good job this year as the offensive coordinator, or not as good as maybe the year before. But it feels like it's got Mike McCarthy's fingerprints all over it, so we'll see. I'm not sure. I don't think we get much change. And you know what, Neil?
5 more years.
15 more years, 100 more years, all the years you can imagine. This team should be better. Right now, they're clearly not the best team in their division, and the Giants have cap space and a better coach, and the other team's Washington. So there we go. Let us get on, and let's talk about the darlings of last week, who we picked and who we're going to pick this week.
Hello, darling.
So my team last week, I picked Patrick Mahomes, which was okay. 22 of 30, 195, two scores, 0 int, which is fine considering he was playing on one leg. Although according to all the plays I've seen, that didn't happen, as he's completely fine this week, which makes me assume they cut his leg off and put a plastic one on. I picked CMC as my running back. Not great. 10 rushes for 35 yards and 6 catches for 22, but his team won, so, whatever. I picked Travis Etienne. 6 yards a rush. That's okay. Only 10 carries, though. 3 catches for 18 yards. It just wasn't that sort of game. You were right. You said that, and you were absolutely right on that.
He seems to be on a hard ceiling of 3 receptions. That's his lot.
Yeah, sounds that way. I picked A.J. Brown. Wasn't A.J.'s game. 3 catches, 22 yards. I also picked C.D. Lamb. He is the only talented wide receiver on the Dallas Cowboys. 10 catches, 117 yards. I picked Dawson Knox. 5 catches, 65 yards. Didn't get the score he had in the previous weeks. Neil also picked Patrick Mahomes. He picked Miles Sanders, 17 rushes for 90 yards. In theory, Neil picked the Philadelphia Eagles running back room, which absolutely dominated the Giants. I believe Wikipedia has been changed. And Neil, which running back is now the owner of the New York Giants?
Boston Scott.
Neil also picked James Cook in 5 rushes for 13 yards. Let's not talk about that. Picked C.D. Lamb, same as me. And then picked Evan Ingram, 5 catches for 31 yards. Neil, this week, obviously only 4 teams, so you are allowed to pick players more than once. Who's your quarterback this week?
My quarterback this week is Jalen Hurts. The San Francisco 49ers defense is very good, but they have not really come up against running quarterbacks much this season. I think if my stats will just load up, please talk amongst yourselves until they do. They have had 62 quarterback rush attempts against them this season. That's the 9th fewest in the NFL. They've allowed 213 rush yards to quarterbacks. That's the 5th fewest. Jalen Hurts averages 11 rush attempts for 50 yards per game. So they've not seen this. They've struggled a little bit against Marcus Mariota a few weeks back. I think Hurts is a slightly better runner at this stage of their careers than Mariota. So I'm taking Jalen Hurts as my quarterback.
I also have Jalen Hurts. I think he was back last week. I think there was nervousness. You were nervous last week. Let's not play games. You were fearful of some kind of 2007 Giants run.
Yeah.
And after 6 minutes of the first quarter, I think the game was over, and we knew that Jalen Hurts was back to pre-injury form. I think he's a great player this week, so I would go with him. Who's your running back 1, Neil?
My running back 1 is, bear with me just a second. My running back one it's still Christian McCaffrey. He is a focal point of the offense. They've been exceptional on offense since he joined. I'm not saying it's all him. He's averaged 14.5 carries per game, 67.8 rush yards per game, and that is the second most among running backs of these four teams. Obviously, we know he's a weapon in the passing game as well, and it helps that, I say, of the four quarterbacks on display, his targets running backs at the highest rate. 24.7% of Brock Purdy's passes go to running backs.
I've also got CMC. I think if the 49ers are going to do anything in this game, CMC will have a major factor in that, so therefore that is someone I will be playing. Who's running back 2, Neil?
I'm going to take Jerick McKinnon, who surprisingly didn't do anything last week. I don't think he drew a target. He's going to have to this week. I think the Chiefs' lack of talent at wide receiver is appalling. Patrick Mahomes targets wide receivers 46.1% of his passes. That's the lowest rate of these four quarterbacks. So I think he's going to try and get out to McKinnon. McKinnon's going to be a bit more used, I think, than Isaiah Pacheco. So for some reason, McKinnon seems to like the playoffs. So last week, I'm going to say was a blip.
I'm going to pick Joe Mixon. I thought he was excellent on Sunday against the Buffalo Bills. As I said previously, it did help that the Bills completely forgot how to tackle or run in cold conditions. But I do think there could be a bit more running than we expect from the Cincinnati Bengals this week, and I expect Mixon obviously to get the majority of those carries. So therefore, I'm going to pick Joe Mixon. Neil, who is your wide receiver 1?
Wide receiver 1 is Jamar Chase. He 28.9% target share. It's the most among all pass catchers in these four games. 7.2 receptions per game, 87.2 receiving yards per game. And he averages just over one end zone target per game as well, which is a pretty good rate. And he's an absolute beast.
I've also picked Jamar Chase, mainly for the absolute beast part rather than the statistics. He's just a wonderful player, and having him and T. Higgins on rookie contracts is some form of cheat code, and you need to make the most of it. And to be fair, Cincinnati have. So yeah, I'm picking him too. Who's wide receiver 2, Neil?
Wide receiver 2 is Devo. I think this is going to be a game, say, where Brock Purdy's going to have to get the ball out quick. And this is where the yak attack comes in. And is there anyone better than Devo Samuel, the ball in his hands, when expected to do a lot with it?
I'm picking Devontae Smith. I think he's warming up nicely, and I expect a big game from him. It's going to be interesting how they cover Smith. I assume Warner is on Goddard. I assume Ward is on Brown. And if that's the case, that does leave the 49ers a bit open to Smith. So I'm going to take Devontae Smith here. Tight end, Neil.
Travis Kelce. He is the passing game for the Chiefs. And it's as we've been saying this now, it seems like 2 or 3 years. Does anyone want to cover him? Or is it that no one can? Because he's always open. It's a joy to watch. And obviously, being a big tight end fan I appreciate the work he has done for people who want to eliminate the position in fantasy. But I say, 153 targets this season, nearly 25% target share, 6.5 receptions a game, and nearly 80 yards. Man's a beast.
He's completely unplayable, and I've also picked him. It's frightening, really, how good he is. And as you quite rightly point out, like say last year, you'd be like, oh, well, Kelsey's open because Hill's there. But Tyreek isn't there anymore. Like, who are they throwing to? And he gets 14 catches. It's unbelievable. And it wasn't like these 14 contested catches mossing over people. He was 5 to 10 yards free regularly, catching the ball and then running another 10 yards. Wonderful player. Yeah, we're getting close to best brothers in NFL history here with these two boys. And there's a chance they may see each other in a couple of weeks. Let's find out who we're not sure about this week and also focus on who we had last week. Last week, I picked Daniel Jones, quarterback. He was rubbish. I picked Ezekiel Elliott. He was worse. I picked Joe Mixon. He was good. 20 carries, 105 yards and a touchdown. Picked Christian Kirk. Also good. 7 catches, 52 yards and a score. I picked any wide receiver on the Kansas City Chiefs. The best one was Kadarius Toney with 5 catches for 36 yards, which kind of says it all. I also picked Dallas Goedert. He got in the end zone. Not good. 5 catches, 58 yards. Also the score. Neil picked Dak. 23 of 37, 206, 1 and 2 back-breaking interceptions, which I think the whole of America have decided that means you have to punch your telly or throw your Dak Prescott jersey in the bin. Running back, Neil picked Isaiah Pacheco, who was good, 12 carries for 95 yards. Travis Etienne, he picked 10 for 62 and 3 for 18, as we've already mentioned. Picked Tyler Boyd, 1 for 23. AJ Brown, 3 for 22, and Bellinger, 1 for 4. So Neil was perfect, really, on the wide receivers and tight ends. Neil, which quarterback aren't you fancying this week?
I don't fancy Brock Purdy. I think he's been very good. He has facilitated the offense. His mistakes are not being punished, and he's been living right. I don't think he can keep doing that. Especially not with Mike McGlinchey at right tackle. He's the big weak spot on the offensive line. He's allowed 6 sacks this season, and there's been 10 penalties against him. So bear in mind that the Eagles like to line up Hassan Reddick and Brandon Graham on that side of the field. I think McGlinchey's going to be a liability, and it'll stop Purdy rolling out to his right, which is where he does a lot of his damage, and it's going to take away a vital string to his bow.
I've also got Brock Purdy. He's playing probably the best defense he's came up against, almost undoubtedly, really, and a team that likes sacks. Neil's mentioned a weakness in the offensive line. I just think it's going to be a tough game. Does that mean he can win or lose? I'm not sure, but I just don't think he's going to light up the scoreboard. Neil is running back one.
Running back one that I'm not feeling. It's Miles Sanders. I don't think we've seen he's not going to get the bulk of the carries. So he's averaged less than 50% of the total team carries this season. Obviously, he has to compete with his quarterback for some of them as well. But we saw last week that it's a committee. Now, he may be the lead of that committee, but he doesn't catch passes. So he needs to be hyper efficient with his opportunities. Plus, I just don't think this is a defense that you can really run on. I think, if the Eagles get into a position where they can lean on the ground game to finish the game, I think they don't trust. I don't think they put Sanders in that position. I think they grind out with Gainwell and Scott. So I think Sanders is going to have to do most of his damage in the first 3 quarters if the Eagles win, and he needs to find the end zone to be a player who's going to put up the serious numbers.
I agree with Neil. I've also picked Miles Sanders pretty much for the same thing, right? I think it's going to be tough to run on this 49ers defense, and given the fact that there's a lot of shared workload in that backfield, including the quarterback, you're talking almost 4 players. Sanders is a no for me. Who's your running back 2, Neil?
Running back 2 is Isaiah Pacheco. As I say, I think this is going to be a passing game. And obviously the big matchup is going to be Reed, Bieniemy, Mahomes against Big Lou. So it's going to be a case of, this is what I'm going to do in coverage. How do you beat it? And we know that Big Red isn't going to say, I'll run you out of it. So it's, Pacheco has I think he's hit the over on his rushing props in 12 games this season. Don't care. He's not going to have a big monster game. Not a massive scorer of touchdowns. So he won't be in any of my lineups.
I also taken Isaiah Pacheco for the same reason. If in doubt, avoid big red running backs, unless they are Westbrook and catch it 14 times. Pacheco is not going to do that in this offense, so therefore, I think he is one to stay well clear of. Wide receiver 1, Neil.
Take your pick. Any Chiefs wide receiver, I'll go with yours from last week, but especially you don't need to be picking Marcus Valdes-Scantling. Dustier than dust.
I have picked Juju, but could have definitely gone with the any wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs shout. It's crazy how easy they move the ball down the field and how many points they score when they have no wide receivers of any note whatsoever.
Kadarius Toney ran 12 routes last season. And last week. And as you said, he had 5 receptions. When he's on the field, they target him, but they don't want him on the field, it seems.
Is it because his hamstrings are made of broken biscuits by any chance? Who's your wide receiver 2, Neil?
Wide receiver 2. T. Higgins hasn't done an awful lot recently, and it's not hurt the Bengals. But as I say, in this situation, if you're looking for a player who's going to go off, I don't think he is. I think he's running too cold. So this is why I would, Jamar Chase is going to carry this team through the air, whereas Higgins needs to start catching up a bit. But it's awfully late in the season to try and find rhythm.
I've gone with Deebo Samuel as one of my game changers in this. Is probably Darius Slay, or Gardner Johnson, or the guy who was at the Giants, and all the other cornerbacks that nobody else could afford to pay, but the Eagles were given about £3.50 and a bag of nuts to. So Deebo is the main wide receiver in this team, main offensive weapon, quote unquote, I guess. And I just don't think it's a big game for him this week. So I'm picking Deebo Samuel here. Neil, tight end.
Well, the Cowboys aren't here, but there's still a Dallas you can overlook. And I don't particularly like Dallas Goedert's chances this week for a big game, partly because, as I say, the 49ers are so good in the middle of their defense. They are clever with their defense, with what they do, so I think Goedert's going to have to do a lot of blocking this week. And he's very good at that. He can do it, but unless you're going to play in a point-per-block competition, not going to help you.
I picked Hayden Hurst. I'm okay with Higgins this week, and I'm okay with Chase, as we've already picked him as a darling. I'm not sure Hayden gets all the touches. I think it'd be more Mixon, more Chase, more Higgins. So I've gone for Hayden Hurst here. Neil, it's that time. Let's find out who we're picking to go to the Super Bowl. Last week, Neil, just for those who were paying attention, Neil got all 4 right. It's now 9-1 in the playoffs. Smoking hot. 7-3 for me. Not quite as hot, but this is how we got here. Neil, we're going to pick your game first. There's many ways you can go here. Whether you believe your heart, your head, you're a reverse jinx man. It's up to you. 49ers at the Eagles, 8 p.m. Sunday night, UK time. Who are you picking?
Eagles by 6.
Okay. And I know you're not going to do much talking about it. What I'm going to say is, I'm also picking the Philadelphia Eagles for a couple of reasons. One, because I've consistently said throughout the season that the best team in the NFC, and it would be silly to suggest now that they're not. I like the coaching matchup from a not necessarily an offensive play calling point of view, but more the kind of game management point of view. If Kyle has a weakness, it is absolutely that. What I'd also say is, the last time the San Francisco 49ers played on the East Coast was the 16th of October, which was week 6. Since then, they played either all West Coast games or a game in Mexico, which is unbelievable. And a scheduling quirk we probably will never see again. Thank you to Taib for pointing this out for me. I know it's only going to be 3 p.m. in Philadelphia, but let's be frank. They started drinking already. They're already in the tailgate. They found out that there's a lacrosse game or there's some kids under 9 soccer that you can get into a different tailgate for. And Brock Purdy ain't been in Philadelphia for the noise. I'm picking the Philadelphia Eagles. I think it's close, Probably even closer than Neil says. But yeah, I'm going to take the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl. Which, means that Neil gets to panic for another couple of weeks. Second game, Neil. Bengals at Chiefs. Who you got?
This I've been going back and forward with. If Patrick Mahomes is alive, he's the best quarterback on the planet. If he's hobbling, he's still one of the best 2 or 3 quarterbacks on the planet. That being said, this team has Mahomes. It has a genius play caller. It has Travis Kelce. If this turns into a shootout, the Bengals have more bullets. Plus, Joe Burrow, as I keep saying, I don't know what it is, but Joe Burrow seems to have it in spades. So, colours to the mast, inking it in, Bengals by 3.
You and I have watched the NFL together since 2001, 2002. 2002, right?
Mm-hmm.
Between the years 2004 to about 2011, every year we said Peyton Manning is going to win this year. He's going to win those games. You know what? Tom Brady always won those games. It really annoyed us. Why did he win? Because he hasn't got a strong arm. And he doesn't look as pretty. He looks prettier, as in facially, but he doesn't look as pretty. And it shouldn't be great. And this defense that they've got, seems to stop people. But where's the talent? Who's the good player? Where are they? I can't see. Why does this continually happen? People tell me that the Kansas City Chiefs have a home field advantage. This is their 5th straight AFC title game. So that means they've been to 4 before, right? Have they been to the last 4 Super Bowls?
No.
No, they have not. Did they also lose to the Tennessee Titans and the Pittsburgh Steelers in divisional games at home prior to that? Yes, they did. Some home field advantage this is. I made a bet with myself a long time ago, and we both did it, that I'd give up betting against Tom Brady until someone proved me otherwise. I'm not suggesting that Joe Burrow is Tom Brady, but right now I'm absolutely petrified to bet against him in the playoffs. So, therefore, I'm going to say, for the 2nd consecutive year, the Cincinnati Bengals go into Kansas City and win the game. And questions are asked about why is Patrick Mahomes more like Aaron Rodgers and less like Tom Brady. Neil, that is it for this week. These predictions are right, Neil. Eagles versus Bengals.
Which, as we've said in the past, is a sliding doors game for me. As if someone could pronounce Cincinnati, I'd be a Bengals fan.
He would be, but our friend Ian decided that Neil could be a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and here we are because of such a thing. Before we're back next week to talk about that Super Bowl and these 2 games, where can people catch you?
Well, when these games finish on Sunday, that will be the end of my regular season content for the 2022 season and playoffs, because I don't think the good folk at Number 5 want me to do a whole article on Super Bowl odds for 2 teams. So that's it. It comes to an end. So now I go into off-season mode, and this is a lot of looking back at the last season. So I will be continuing my work on the RotoViz rookie comparison series. First one came out this week. It's a wide receiver whose rookie production looks an awful lot like Stephon Diggs. I'll be doing, obviously, other bits for other places. I'm doing a live, far too early mock draft for 2023 for 4for4 football on Tuesday night. I think it's going to be on YouTube. So, because we're sick. So we're doing...
That is sick, by the way.
Yeah. Brock Purdy, first overall pick, of course. So looking forward to that.
Amazing. I am at Mainz7. Combined, we are at waxing_lyrical. Touchdown review this week. I corralled everyone on the pod at the absolute same time. So if you enjoy a man trying to herd cats while we have a heel guy going at Kyle Shannon and another guy going at Joe Burrow, this is the podcast for you. Get it listened to, get it subscribed to, and get some 5 stars out there. Great stuff, Neil. Big weekend for you. Big weekend for the NFL. I'm not gonna lie to you, Neil. Wish you luck. You know, this is why we do all this, and I hope you get what you wish for. And based on that, Neil, these top guys are out. Yes.